on WTTW.
It's our last week of our March membership drive, and we thank you for your support. We hear how WTTW makes a difference in your life, especially right now. We also hear you want more of our core programming during our fundraising drives. Well, you're in luck. This week, our primetime programming from 6 to 10 p.m. will air uninterrupted as always. But we still need your help to reach our fundraising goals. Call 773-588-1111 or go to WTTW.com. Join us at whatever level is comfortable, $5, $10, $15 a month. Your ongoing monthly gift can bring great member benefits like Passport, the PBS streaming service, which you can use to stream and binge hours of your favorite programs anytime, anywhere. Call 773-588-1111 or go to WTTW.com to become a member now. Thank you.
It was the blue-collar Titanic.
Safety was just utterly disregarded.
There was no iceberg, no torpedo. Someone surely did something wrong, and yet somehow...
Graft, corruption.
It's Chicago, you know. Somebody got paid.
Friday at 8:30 on WTTW.
So you think you know Chicago? Prove it. Get ready for the Great Chicago Quiz Show.
WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center.
Hola, me llamo María, watching WTTW.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the generosity of the Lloyd A. Fry Foundation.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. On the show tonight,
The yeas are 220, the nays are 211.
Illinois state senators on what the massive federal COVID relief bill will mean for Illinois.
I'm going to launch the next phase of the COVID response.
And President Biden is already looking ahead after the plan passes in Congress. We'll tackle that and more in Spotlight Politics. Could Target be coming to the Magnificent Mile, and would that be a good thing? The CTA board approves a nearly $2 million settlement for a cyclist struck by a CTA bus in 2019. What exactly are NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, and how are they changing the art industry?
It was absolutely insane.
We check in with local bike shops and cycling groups on what's ahead this season after a record-setting 2020. And a portrait of a retired Chicago public school teacher who now dedicates himself to the art of printmaking in the Mexican tradition. But first, some of today's top stories. Alleged Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse's trial has been pushed to November at the earliest. The 18-year-old Antioch resident had been scheduled to stand trial late this month. He's accused of killing 2 people and wounding a third amid a protest against police brutality in August. At a virtual hearing today, both sides told the judge they needed more time to prepare. State health officials announced more than 1,600 new cases of COVID-19 today, including 30 additional deaths. Illinois has now seen more than 1.2 million cases and 20,810 total deaths. And the CTA announces it has started on-site vaccinations for employees, beginning with frontline workers like train and bus operators. Chicago police say a joint anti-carjacking task force this past weekend netted a dozen arrests. Superintendent David Brown says nearly half of the more than 300 carjacking-related arrests so far this year involve juveniles.
We all need to help our young people make better choices, and we need mentors to show them the way. A system of support is the best deterrent, and for those that do offend, we need real consequences.
Brown also announced a new police website dedicated to carjacking information and prevention. We've got much more on this story on our website. And now to Amanda Vinicky and what Congress's COVID relief package could mean for Illinois. Amanda.
Paris, President Joe Biden's signature $1.9 trillion COVID relief package is expected to bring roughly $13 billion in aid to Illinois. The bill passed both chambers of Congress without any Republican support and is scheduled to be signed into law on Friday. Among other things, the bill includes $1,400 checks for individuals earning less than $75,000 a year. But will it be enough to get past the pandemic? What will that money do for the state? And what of Republican criticism that the bill is a bloated Democratic wish list? Joining us to share their thoughts are Republican State Senator Jason Barackman from Bloomington, Democratic State Senator Ram Villavalam from Chicago, Democratic State Senator Christina Pacioni-Zayas from Chicago, and Republican State Senator Donald DeWitt from West Dundee. We thank all of you for being here with us right now. And I believe some of you are still coming to us from Springfield as you had the State Senate back in session for today. Senator Villavalam, did things begin to feel a little like they're returning to normal?
It did. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having us. Obviously, we have been working tirelessly in our districts, making sure that our constituents have been served over the last year during the pandemic. You've had virtual committee hearings much of last year and into this year. However, being in Springfield, nothing replaces being in the Capitol, making sure that we're having the conversations we need to have and moving the bills we need to move in order to get through this pandemic, have serious conversations to get to a balanced budget and move our state forward.
And Senator DeWitt, what, you did that saliva test to make sure that everybody was safe? Is that how things went?
The SHIELD test that was created at the University of Illinois is the acid test, if you will, for COVID testing here at the Capitol. Staff members are required to test 3 times a week. Legislators, once they test, their test is good for 2 days. We're out tomorrow, so our test Monday nights got us in the door. And I think it's a great way to make sure everyone is functioning as safely as possible.
Well, glad to hear that you all tested, I would presume, therefore, negative for COVID and that you are healthy. Let's get to the American Rescue Plan, $1.9 trillion. Polling does suggest that this is popular with Republicans and Democrats alike, and yet all GOP members of Congress voted against the package. Senator Barackman, was that a mistake?
Well, look, I think Washington had a debate on this. It's over. The question in Illinois is how those funds are going to be spent. And I think that deserves a third debate in our state's capital. For me, I think the priorities of where those funds should go, we know Illinois is going to receive a significant amount of money from the federal government. We'd like to see those funds prioritized first towards our debts, second towards our bill backlog. We think it's really important that those funds aren't used to simply expand our government. You know, we've got a lot of families and small business owners who are hurting. Those funds should be prioritized where they're needed and shouldn't be used to just expand the government further.
That was, of course, going to be one of my questions coming up, is what should Illinois do? Is it is set to receive about $7 billion. So let's go to Senator Villavalam. What are your thoughts on that? How should Illinois fold this in as your task with drafting the next budget?
Well, it's a great question. I do agree that we need to meet our obligations, whether it's our pension obligation or other debts. We need to get a hold of our bill backlog. I think those are the 2 priorities as it relates to our regular budget conversation. I think we also need to make sure that we aid the vaccine rollout, we aid testing, we aid the other pieces of the puzzle that are going to get us through the end of this pandemic. Just because we see the light at the end of the tunnel doesn't mean we're at the end of the tunnel. I would also say, though, that we need to look to the future. What are we going to do to invest in our economy here, invest in our infrastructure to make sure that working class families and small businesses can get back on their feet and move our state forward?
Now, Senator Passione-Valles, if you have anything that you want to add in terms of how Illinois should spend those dollars, please feel free to add that. But I did, of course, also want to focus on you because you have a background in early childhood. And I have seen the American Rescue Package described as transformative in bringing children out of poverty. What is your assessment?
Yeah, there was a real win because my understanding there's about $40 billion dedicated to child care specifically. And about a little over $1 billion is coming to the state of Illinois, which is really critical. I mean, because I think whether people recognize it or not, child care is an enabling sector for our society to function. And that was really on the brink of collapse without this particular investment. The same with our schools. We really need to think about not only stabilizing our schools and preparing them for in-person learning, but also thinking about how are we going to reimagine education and what are the investments we're going to make to take the lessons learned from this particular pandemic and apply them to how we are going to be preparing children moving forward to inherit the society in which we are preparing them to.
So that is federally designated. Is there anything that you believe Illinois needs to be doing as it is set to get this infusion of dollars? Senator Passione-Valles.
I mean, I think we definitely need to think through the rent and mortgage relief. The last time we had appropriated funds, we put together a program. We were able to get quite a few, get it out the door, but there needs to be some very specific provisions for various communities that they weren't able to access it. Specifically in the Latino community, when we looked at the numbers, it wasn't quite in terms of parity with the population, and also thinking about the historic housing burden that Latino families have encumbered over the years.
Now, it has been a year since Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker first declared a statewide disaster declaration because of COVID. At the time, there were, I believe, 11 cases in the state of the coronavirus. As of today, the state public health department announced 1,682 new cases. Senator DeWitt, what is your assessment of how the Pritzker administration has handled things this past year?
Well, I think initially I applauded the aggressive nature that the governor took with regards to ensuring that people were taking the appropriate measures to keep themselves safe. The directives about masking, the directives about social distancing, that certainly was, that preceded the business restrictions that were put in place. Essential workers were established, essential employers, but there were segments of our economy that took a significant beating. Our entertainment, hospitality, restaurant, hotel industry, over 500,000 people were put out of work simply because that directive was put out through executive order by the governor. I think the real challenge that we have ahead of us is how quickly do we get those different industries and segments of our economy back up and running so that they can be productive, revenue-generating components of bringing our state's economy back to some semblance of fiscal order.
Illinois is in this phase 4, as this state dubs it, of restrictions for, well, we don't really know when that will be lifted. Senator Barackman, does Illinois need to have any restrictions lifted now?
Yeah, I think we need to start talking about phase 5. The governor's guidelines provide really vague and arbitrary measures for how you even get to phase 5. He talks about testing being available and vaccines being available. Well, we're seeing that all over the state. My colleagues here have talked about making investments in our schools and with our small business owners and the people who've struggled over the last year. The best thing Illinois can do is start to reopen its economy. There's a number of...
Anything in particular?
Sure. Schools. Let's start with schools. There's many schools around the state that continue to try to navigate this through a remote learning process. That's not good for the school children. The CDC has been clear that the schools are safe.
Didn't the State Board of Education just say, though, that some 89% of districts have some version of learning in person right now?
Sure, some version. What does that mean? Does that mean students are in class 2 days a week, 3 days a week? Again, the idea here, you take back COVID and ask anyone, what would be the impact on our school children if they weren't in a classroom with a teacher in front of them, learning together, collaborating for an entire year? There are some schools in the state who, my school, but as an example, my children were in class for less than 15 days over the last year.
We just have like 30 seconds left, so I want to actually bring back Senator Pacione-Zayas, because we didn't get, of course, to vaccinations. That is a huge thing. Are the most vulnerable people in your district getting those shots?
Well, I can say that some improvements have been made, but we have a long way to go. I was just on a briefing with the city, and the city of Chicago just said that over the past couple weeks, 50% of the vaccines have gone to Latino and African American communities. So that is a significant improvement. But that also didn't come without a lot of pressure and a lot of sweat equity from our community-based organizations who are trusted messengers and have been able to quickly fashion and stand up these vaccine sites. And I think we need to see more of that happening so that we have that. We invite people into the process, we normalize it, and we allay any types of concerns, but ultimately we get the outcomes that we're seeking.
And we'll be keeping our eye on that, as well as, of course, further action in Springfield. So safe travels as each of you head back to your districts. With that, our thanks to State Senators Jason Barackman, Ram Villavalum, Christina Pacione-Zayas, and Donald DeWitt for joining us.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
And now, Paris, back to you.
Thank you, Amanda. A major retail chain has quite a target on its back, hint, hint. Rumors that the Minnesota-based Target was sniffing around Water Tower Place on the Magnificent Mile made for some harsh backlash, especially from one prominent elected official. So what does this kerfuffle say about the future of the landmark shopping district, especially as vacancy rates soar? Joining us now with more is Albie Galoon, commercial real estate reporter with Crain's Chicago Business. Albie, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Paris.
All right, so how likely is it that Target is going to go into the Water Tower Mall on Michigan Avenue?
Well, it's really hard to say at this point. We know that they have looked at it, and they have a big space to fill at Water Tower Place. Macy's is vacating in a couple weeks, and so they occupy more than 300,000 square feet. Macy's is the biggest tenant in Water Tower Place, so the owner of the mall has to figure out what to do with all that space, and they're kind of going through that process right now. Target would be a candidate.
And I want to get to that Macy's vacancy in a bit, but why so much backlash to the notion of Target on the Magnificent Mile?
Well, so on Friday and in prior radio interviews, Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas has been speaking out against Target, basically kind of spouting off on the rumors that Target would be going there. And her basic view is that it would be kind of a come down for the Mag Mile and Water Tower Place. It's not, it would kind of debase the shopping strip.
And just to be clear, it sounds kind of random that she's speaking of, but she lives right there, so she seems to have a personal interest in that.
She does. That's a very good point.
And is that why you think that she was going on the radio, kind of sounding off on it?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, she makes no secret of the fact that she lives right there, and she shops at Water Tower Place. She's obviously not afraid to share her opinions, and even if they're just based on rumors in the market at this point.
Now, you mentioned Macy's vacating there. How big of an impact is that going to have on Water Tower? And as I understand, this was in the works before COVID, before some of the unrest that happened this summer, correct?
Well, we don't exactly know when they were starting to talk about leaving Water Tower Place. We knew that they were looking to shrink their space, and then in January they confirmed that they were going to leave the shopping center entirely. So, they are shrinking. Department stores are having a very hard time these days staying relevant in the e-commerce world. So and Macy's is no exception.
Another retailer, Victoria's Secret, is reportedly leaving now on the Magnificent Mile. How come?
Well, they're facing a lot of same pressures that other retailers are facing. And it's kind of exacerbated on the Mag Mile because rents are so high on North Michigan Avenue, and it's hard for a lot of retailers to justify paying those high rents when their sales aren't high enough. And over the last few years, sales have not been very strong on Michigan Avenue. I mean, some retailers obviously are doing quite well, and there are retailers that are moving on to the avenue, like Starbucks just opened a massive roastery in the former Crate and Barrel space. So this is not a universal problem, but generally speaking, a lot of retailers are struggling to justify paying the high rent there.
All right, so you're mentioning brands like Starbucks opening up that giant roastery, possibly Target. Is that the future of the Magnificent Mile? More of these big, well-known chains?
Well, a lot of people in the retail world talk about concepts that are e-commerce resistant. There's a lot of talk about experiential retailing, giving consumers something that they can't get online. And so that's what you get with the Starbucks roastery. It's an experience. That's kind of what you get at the Apple Store along the Chicago River. So that's a big thing that retailers are trying to offer. And, this has been something that's been going on Michigan Avenue for a while. A lot of the flagship stores are there. They're there for branding purposes. There's so much foot traffic along the Mag Mile that they're like huge billboards for these brands.
And we'll see if that foot traffic returns in the coming months and years as the pandemic winds down. All right, Albie Galoon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paris.
And up next, a check-in with local bicycle shops to hear what they're expecting this season, so please stick around.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. What do you believe prevents a strong coalition of Black and Latino communities forming across the communities?
I want us to, as a nation, to find a way to come together.
Go down the block, get it from someone local, and keep the money in the community.
Black joy and the Black experience is magical.
Bicycle sales skyrocketed in 2020 as the pandemic forced more and more people to exercise and commute outdoors. But the surge in demand plus supply chain issues led to lingering shortages still being felt in Chicago's cycling community. Chicago Tonight's Quinn Myers checked in with local bike shops and cycling groups about the tumultuous past year and what to expect this season.
Bike shops across Chicago say they've never quite experienced anything like 2020.
It was absolutely insane. I've been in this business for 25 years. I've been a bike retailer that long, and I have never seen anything like it.
Justina Frank is the co-owner of Cosmic Bikes in Jefferson Park, which sells and fixes a wide range of styles. At first, Frank says last year's bike boom was really great, until they ran out of stuff to sell.
Somehow we were still chugging along, and then I don't remember exactly when, but at some point there was nothing more we could get. There was a point in the summer where we couldn't get basic inner tube sizes, some really basic components to do repairs on people's existing bikes.
Bike sales jumped 65% in 2020 over the previous year, according to data from market research firm NPD Group. That came on top of a host of pandemic-related supply chain issues for bike manufacturers. In Chicago, that translated into long waits for maintenance last summer and an almost total scarcity of new bikes.
Last year, people were like, oh yeah, this must be really great for you. Well, yeah, the demand is great, but the demand has to be coupled with dependable supply. If you have demand and there's no supply, then you're spending a lot of time explaining to people why you don't have what you don't have.
Bike shop owners in Chicago say they've been able to at least partially restock and catch their breath after last year's bike boom. But because of uncertainty in the market, there may be another shortage this year.
We can't order any more bikes for 2021.
whatever we're getting in now is what we're getting. And they've actually started us looking at 2022.
Jillian Forsyth owns and operates BFF Bikes on Damon Avenue in Bucktown, which sells bikes and cycling apparel geared toward women. Forsyth says in the past, when they didn't have a part, she would just order it and it would come. These days, she says BFF is trying to stock up in case there won't be anything left in a few months.
You bring your bike in and, you're crossing your fingers hoping that, we can get the part for you if you need it.
While the past year has put a significant strain on local bike shops, it's also been a boon to area cycling groups. In South Suburban Alsip, we caught up with the Chicago chapter of Black Girls Do Bike, a cycling club organized by and for women of color, although all women are welcome. The group's leader, Celeste Adams, says they've seen a huge surge of interest since the pandemic began.
People were really getting into cycling, and they were trying to reach out to various cycling groups, hey, can I join? We had well over 100 people join our club in 2020.
Black Girls Do Bike paused group rides for safety reasons in 2020, but are expecting to have a full calendar this season. Just this week, about 15 women showed up for an afternoon ride along the Cal-Sag Channel.
Even though we've been riding individually, we have truly missed riding with our clubs, in our groups, with the camaraderie of a group. So we are really looking forward to doing that. People say I have to lose weight, I got to get a new bike, I have to, you have a lot of reasons, and it's just ride with whatever you have. Come on out right now and take advantage of this.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Quinn Myers.
Let's see how long that cycling weather lasts. Local shops say if you're trying to buy a new bike this year, do it sooner rather than later and expect to pay more. And you can also learn more about Black Girls Do Bike on our website. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, the CTA reaches a settlement with a cyclist struck and run over by a bus driver who had racked up overtime before he was fired. Non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, they're making millions for some digital artists. How are these crypto assets changing art and investing? Our Spotlight Politics team looks at the COVID stimulus and how the $1.9 trillion are being spent. And the Mexican tradition of printmaking is alive and well at a Chicago printing press run by a retired public school teacher. But first, some more of today's top stories. Cook County is set to have a new public defender. Sharon Mitchell, director of the nonprofit Illinois Justice Project, is County Board President Tony Preckwinkle's reported pick. A former attorney with the Public Defender's Office, Mitchell will face a county board confirmation vote on Friday. He's set to succeed current public defender Amy Campanelli, who had hoped to be appointed to a second 6-year term. Preckwinkle has so far stayed quiet on why Campanelli wasn't kept on. Mayor Lori Lightfoot says she's cautiously optimistic that some of Chicago's summer events can return in one form or another. That comes as city officials say they'll make a final decision on the Taste of Chicago and Air and Water Show in the coming weeks. Lightfoot wouldn't predict which events will or won't happen, but she says this summer will likely look more like a normal one in Chicago.
Let's be honest, just because we say X event is happening doesn't mean that people are going to come in mass. Unless they're 18 or 19, they'll come. But for the rest of us, we're a little more cautious. It doesn't mean that people are going to come and flock back in mass. But we know so much more about this virus, how it spreads, than we did a year ago. We know in particular about outside events that we can manage these in a safe way that's consistent with public health guidance.
And Lightfoot made these comments at an event announcing a new program to help Black, Latino, and female-owned companies that do business with the city to get access to financing as they recover from the pandemic. We'll have more details about that on our website. And businessman and philanthropist Richard Driehaus has died. An investment manager by trade, Driehaus advocated for historic preservation and classical architecture through his namesake foundation and the Driehaus Prize, awarded yearly to a living architect. WTTW produced documentaries about many of the prize winners. And Cranes reports Driehaus died after suffering a cerebral hemorrhage at his home on Monday. He was 78. The CTA's board of directors approves a $1.75 million settlement for a man who was struck by a bus while riding his bike in 2019. Chicago Tonight's Nick Blumberg has been following this story since the crash and joins us now with details. Nick.
Well, Paris, Joseph Morgan was biking southbound on Wells, approaching Hubbard the morning of June 6, 2019, when he was hit and run over by a bus that was pulling up to a stop at the corner there. Now, we've got an animation showing the bike lane that Morgan was riding in highlighted in green, the bus lanes in blue, and the bus shelters circled. The police crash report says he was taken to Northwestern Memorial with serious injuries and that his bike was heavily damaged as well. His attorney told us in 2019 that Morgan had major orthopedic and gastrointestinal injuries as a result of the crash, necessitating a rerouted colon, and also faced blood loss and extensive road rash. Now, Morgan sued the CTA and the bus operator, Sunday Ajayi, for major injuries, medical bills, and lost pay. His attorney told us that he had to stay with family in Michigan while he was recovering and couldn't work, though he was able to get back to work some time ago. This morning, the CTA board approved that $1.75 million settlement. In a brief statement to WTTW News today, the CTA called the incident unfortunate and says that based on the facts of the case and following mediation, the agency believes it's in its best interests to settle.
As opposed to possibly prolong a legal fight. And what happened to the bus driver, Nick?
Well, he was fired by the CTA just about a month after the crash, which was his third on the job in a period of a year and a half or so. Court records also show he'd had 18 traffic tickets between 1989 and 2005, including 3 while he was working for the CTA. And he was also among the CTA's highest paid bus drivers in several recent years, taking home nearly $118,000 in 2017 and about $151,000, which included some back pay in 2018. Now, based on his hourly rate at the time, a full year's pay at 40 hours a week would come out to about $73,000.
Wow, so he made more than twice that. How was that?
It appears to be largely driven by overtime. Before Ajayi was fired, CTA records show he worked 532 hours of overtime in 2019. Now that comes out to an average work week of nearly 60 hours. At the time, we asked the CTA if the agency was understaffed and how heavily it relied on overtime. The agency says its drivers choose to work overtime. They're not assigned. And in a statement then told us, CTA workplace rules ensure that bus operators have at least 8 hours off between shifts in keeping with industry best practices. An operator is only eligible for overtime work if the end of the overtime shift is more than 8 hours from the beginning of their scheduled work the next day. The CTA told us earlier today that its overtime policies haven't changed since then. We were unable to reach the former driver. Paris?
Wow, Nick, a lot to uncover there. Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you can read Nick's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. NFTs, they're all the rage in both the art and cryptocurrency worlds lately, and now they're creeping into other industries. At this point, you're probably asking, what in the world is an NFT? Good question. We're about to answer that, but just know they can get really pricey. This collage called Every Days, the first 5,000 days, by an artist named Beeple is on auction at Auction House Christie's with a current bid of more than $13 million. It is the first digital art to be auctioned at Christie's. And joining us to break down what NFTs actually are and what impact they're having is Donna Riddell, law professor at Fordham University and a board member of the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance. Donna Riddell, welcome to Chicago Tonight.
Really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you. So basic terms, what is an NFT or non-fungible token?
I'm glad you broke down that it was a non-fungible token. So a non-fungible token is exactly what it says. It is a unique token and it lives on a blockchain. And a blockchain therefore records the provenance of it and who owns it from time to time as it gets sold along the way. And so you have a perfect record of where it came from, who it goes to, and all of the transactions from the time in which it was birthed.
blockchain, of course, the technology used for cryptocurrencies, so it is a authentic thing that you own. And we mentioned it's used in art right now, so how is owning a non-fungible token piece of art like owning an actual physical piece of art?
It's very different because you're owning code, and the code is then manifested in an image. The other thing I think what's really going on now is that you're a part of a community, and you are, by having this NFT of an artist, you are binding yourself to that artist in the sense that you want to be part of what they represent, and it's on the blockchain. And so I think you're seeing right now, that there is a convergence and hence an explosion, which is a very explosive combination of celebrity brands priced all around NFT, and for the most part manifesting itself in art, whether it be visual art or music art. And
speaking of that, there's an NFT music video by the artist Grimes that is worth $400,000 purportedly. My question is, if anyone can click on this and see this, what is the value in spending $400,000 and owning it?
Well, you raise a good question, but you know that is that you own it, and conceivably you could have some rights that are embedded in the contract, because on every NFT there is a smart contract, and that contract puts in the rights and obligations of the seller and the rights and obligations of the buyer. So I may have certain rights that attach to that NFT that I could then go and do something with.
We mentioned at the top Christie's auction house selling this NFT piece by a crypto artist named Beeple for upwards of $13 million. Why is this piece so valuable?
Well, he's a proven artist. He was doing what you would call non-digital art. I mean, he was doing tangible art for quite some time. And then he moved into the digital space. He's already tested the waters in that he sold some piece on Nifty Gateway, I believe it was, for about $4.6 million. Before, even though at that time that he sold it, it was well known that he was going to be at Christie's. So I think that he became a very collectible artist, and Christie's, who took a real gamble to move into the digital world in terms of NFTs. They've been in other kinds of digital art before, but move into NFTs. They picked this artist, and they did a smart move. They were very smart.
And is the idea that, like any great piece of physical art, that an NFT piece of art might appreciate over time, might really grow in value?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in anything that you make an investment in, and clearly if you're spending $11 million, you're making an investment, you're hoping that that investment will be sustainable over time. And I think that that's what's happening here. There is a lot of speculation going on, but on the other side, one of the things I think that's really beautiful about NFTs is that it's onboarding people into the crypto space. You have to get a wallet. You have to maybe buy some ETH, which is the gas or a currency that a lot of the NFTs are sold in. And so it becomes a very flexible way for people to get involved in cryptocurrencies because they're interested in art or music, or NFTs are now in fashion. And so I think that this becomes a really interesting way to onboard people into what will be a greater universe of crypto.
It's that entry into that world. We only have a few seconds left, but where can NFTs expand into? We talked about art. The musical group Kings of Leon, they released their album with an NFT. What other industries could this touch?
Well, we're already seeing it in sports with Top Shot. They're selling NFTs that are moments, very famous basketball moments, whether it's LeBron making a dunk or others. And they're sold, I think they believe in the first couple of months, over $1 million of these moments. So sports has a lot of fans. Fans want to connect with their superstar or their team. And so this is a natural way in which fans and all the teams can expand that connectivity. Because most of this is about connection, being part of something that you really adore, something that you spent a lifetime in, as in sports, wanting to be included in. And this gets you there in a different way than if you were in the arena.
And to have some feeling of ownership of that. All right, fascinating subject.
Exactly correct. And so have a feeling of ownership of whether it be the art piece, the moment, the music, and also a lot of the artists are making sure that embedded in their contract is give back to the community.
All right, Donna Riddell, fascinating subject. Thank you so much for your insights.
Welcome, welcome, anytime. Happy to be here.
All right, and up next, our Spotlight Politics team dives into the details of the COVID stimulus plan. But first, a look at the weather. A big day in national news with the stimulus passing in Congress and Merrick Garland confirmed as Attorney General with bipartisan support. We'll also shine our spotlight on some city, state, and other political news as well. And joining us tonight are Amanda Vinicky and Heather Sharon. Let's start with that $1.9 trillion COVID relief package that passed the House today. Here is what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell had to say.
Help is on the way. You will receive $1,400 checks by the end of March. Help is on the way. Vaccines will be available far more quickly.
This is a classic example of big government Democratic overreach in the name of COVID relief.
All right, Heather Sharon, break it down. What is this stimulus package going to mean for Illinoisans?
Well, most people will see a $1,400 stimulus check, and if you are unemployed and getting unemployment insurance, that will be extended through Labor Day with an extra $300. There's a host of other provisions. There's money for states and cities, as well as school districts, as well as money for testing and vaccine, and it will also take a real stab at reducing child poverty. It expands the child tax credit, and it also expands aid in terms of food to combat hunger. It's a real smorgasbord of progressive attempts to get the economy going as we see this vaccine rollout take action.
And yesterday on the show, we had Congressman Danny Davis from Chicago calling it manna from heaven. So, Amanda, is this going to be manna for Illinois' and Chicago's dire budget situations?
You know, I think it is going to cause, in some ways, it is going to alleviate headaches for Mayor Lightfoot and for Governor J.B. Pritzker. Certainly, they would be having to make a whole lot of tougher decisions were it not for this federal money. It gives them breathing room. And at the same time, it gives them a headache. Already, my inbox has, for example, an email from the Chicago Teachers Union ever at the back of Mayor Lightfoot saying, we want money to be directed in this fashion. And there is going to be, whenever you get sort of a big, huge gift like this, you're going to have politicians looking to spend it on what their priorities are, and of course those priorities are not always in alignment. So it is, like I said, both once a gift but also a brand new headache.
And we even see the mayor tamping down expectations about this $1.8 billion or so windfall. Heather, let's also talk about Merrick Garland, Lincolnwood native. Niles,
Lincolnwood High School graduate.
Lincolnwood High School. Niles West. But all right, we got to get those northwest suburbs straight. He was confirmed by a 70-30 vote today after many delays. Are you surprised it was bipartisan like this?
No, it was always clear that Merrick Garland was somebody who was highly respected, even by members of the Republican Party. Of course, there were some Republicans who said they couldn't vote for him. They thought that he would be too partisan of an attorney general, which many Democrats said was quite rich coming after Attorney General Bill Barr under President Trump, who, of course, made no bones about his job being there to protect the president. But it is redemption of sorts for Merrick Garland, who, of course, was nominated by former President Barack Obama to the United States Supreme Court. and didn't even get a hearing in the United States Senate thanks to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who today voted to confirm him as Attorney General. So it all comes full circle.
Well, and it's of course a different ball game there, right? I mean, one is a lifetime appointment to the state's highest court, or to the nation's high court, and you also had this really turn into when he was Obama's nominee to the Supreme Court, Republicans seeing a chance, running with it, taking a bet that paid off in terms of their getting instead a seat on the court. Whereas here, I mean, this is a president. So if they weren't going to back Garland, who would they go get behind for a position like this? It's just different.
And Heather, tomorrow we expect to hear from President Biden. In fact, we will have his primetime address at 7 o'clock on Chicago Tonight. What do you expect to hear from him?
Well, we're going to hear him talk about it being really a year since the coronavirus pandemic changed all of our lives. It is the anniversary of the day that we all learned that Tom Hanks had tested positive for COVID-19, as well as the end of NBA play, where, of course, the game was stopped in the middle of it by a positive test. And that, like for me and for many Americans, that was the day when I realized that it was really going to be a significant disruption. And I think we're going to hear him talk about the more than 500,000 Americans who have died. He's going to pay tribute to their memory, but he's also going to try to look ahead. I expect he will say something along the lines of, we're not through this tunnel yet, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I expect he will encourage people to get vaccinated when it's their chance, and he will claim credit for speeding the rollout of those vaccines. And he will no doubt celebrate the package of the $1.9 billion relief package we just detailed.
And one of the places to get vaccinated, the United Center. Amanda, you were out there on day one of vaccination last night. Even the last couple hours, the city has adjusted who is eligible to sign up for appointments there to try and improve some of these equity numbers. Tell us about the changes they're announcing.
Well, so they had indicated actually yesterday that they were going to really focus on these 5 zip codes, as we reported. What we didn't really know was how this was going to work. That we knew that there was going to be a focus on the part of the city and the state to really target the vaccinations. And it seems as if they're going to be using what is basically a coupon code that you're going to have to enter in if you are somebody who resides in one of these areas, and then you'll need to prove that. And if not, you'll get your appointment canceled. And this comes as Dr. Arwady has said, you know, don't lie here on things like your address and your age, because this is going to be your permanent vaccination record. So if, as we are already seeing, it is something that you might need to use to travel, if you are looking to get out of the country, for example, at some point, take a vacation when that is safe to do so, you're going to need that to match up to your personal data. So that is there. But Paris, I believe also the Tribune has indicated that there are some additional problems with that rollout. For example, we did get guarantees just yesterday that when folks were there getting that first vaccine, that's when they would make an appointment for that second dose of the Pfizer vaccine. And instead, the Trib reporting that already isn't happening, and some people don't even have cell phone numbers or email addresses, so it's going to be even more difficult. The onus will be on the first dose vaccinated to reach out to the city, wait through that bear of getting through to a phone line to make their second appointment.
Make sure to get that second dose. But Heather, basically the city is responding to the figures that were showing that something like 60% of the folks signing up at some point were not from the city of Chicago. So they're trying to reorient it that the majority will be from Chicago, and especially from the communities hardest hit, and then communities hardest hit in suburban Cook County, and then a little bit outside of Cook County as well. Do you believe that this will start to get those equity numbers in the right direction?
Well, it's hard to say, because when they opened appointments for the United Center at 8:30 Thursday morning, it was open to all Illinois residents. And I'm surprised that they were surprised that that meant that 60% of people who signed up were from outside Chicago, and that the vast majority were white or Asian, because we've seen time and again as the vaccines have rolled out, that's who has access to the internet and can wait and keep clicking to make those appointments. I think it really has to do with this being designed not appropriately to achieve those equity goals by opening it up to everybody on Thursday and then sort of trying to pull it back and say, wait, we're going to target it a little bit more. That has led to a lot of frustration, a lot of hard feelings, especially for people in Chicago and Cook County who are hoping to get appointments, because the United Center is the only place, if you have an underlying health condition, to get vaccinated right now, because the city and Cook County haven't moved to that next phase. So it's very frustrating, and it seems like, as Amanda reported, there's not a whole lot, there's still a lot of questions remaining on how it's going to ultimately work.
Well, some questions have been resolved now in terms of what baseball is going to look like in the spring and summer. Take a look at what the mayor had to announce on that front.
I knew you had it in you. Let's play ball, Chicago.
All right, Amanda, I know that you're going to be gearing up to try and get tickets at Sox Park. Heather, over at Wrigley Field, only about 8,000 or so fans in each stadium to start off with. Amanda, how is this going to work?
It's, I think, going to be empty relatively, a 20% capacity. These are huge stadiums. That said, I do imagine that it is going to be this kind of slow tread back to reality, back to our normal lives. And hey, it's the American pastime, right? This is the start of it. We did hear today, Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked, because we're sort of in this lull, this phase 4, with no deadline for when we will move to what the state phrases as phase 5, which would be life close to really normal without this, 50% capacity at restaurants and such. And the governor indicated that he is at least considering and open to some of these changes, because he really is under a whole lot of pressure to lift some of those restrictions. And by the way, not just from Republicans, including Democrats like State Senator Sarah Feigenholtz saying, hey, wait a second, the state's losing conventions. We need to have a concrete plan and some more metrics. We had the metrics for closing down. Now we need metrics for opening back up.
And I think there's a Cranes report out there right now that says that conventions could possibly return to McCormick Place, including the auto show, which has sort of been on hold for a while. It normally takes place in February. Heather, what do you think about other events like the Air and Water Show, Lollapalooza, Taste of Chicago? Are they going to happen?
Well, it's not clear yet, because when the city approved its 2021 budget, they didn't appropriate any money for those festivals. The Taste of Chicago and the Air and Water Show alone cost the city about $9 million. So if those events are to take place, the mayor has to, A, decide that it's safe enough to allow people to gather, and B, she's got to find that money to make those events happen. And it might seem like summer's a long way away, but it's really not, because these events take, of course, planning and logistics, especially if you're going to, make sure there are toilets and hand washing stations and all of the other things that, need to be in place to prevent COVID from spreading. So it's not clear yet, although we did hear the mayor say she was optimistic that this summer would look more like 2019 than 2020.
So if the Air and Water Show does happen, I think the three of us will probably be tandem skydiving to kick off the event this year. See if the mayor's office listens to that. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you guys. Thank you all so much. And we'll have coverage of President Biden's address on our program tomorrow night. A Chicago public school teacher took an early retirement to pursue his dream to continue in the long line of Mexican artists who excel at printmaking. From depicting calaveras, the skulls seen in the Day of the Dead celebration, to pursuing themes of social justice, Renee Arceo is the heir apparent to an enduring tradition. Arts producer Mark Vitale recently shared a portrait of the Chicagoan who has recommitted himself to his art and culture. Here's another look.
When we visited his studio in pre-pandemic days, he was working alone. But this artist has a talent for collaboration.
I'm Renee Arceo. I'm a printmaker. I have collaborative place which is called Arceo Press, where I publish prints with artists from not only across the United States, but from different parts of the world. There's somebody from Costa Rica, from Puerto Rico, Canada, in Spain and France. There's several South American artists that are living in the United States that have collaborated. Some Venezuelan, Argentinian, Peruvian.
From lino cuts and silk screens to wood engravings and etchings, printmakers need a wide range of skill sets. We first learned about Chicago's Arceo Press when the Bridgeport Art Center hosted an exhibit of work by Rene Arceo and the artists he works with. That show was called The Border Crossed Us. Arceo grew up in a small town near Guadalajara. He told us the story of his own border crossing in 1979 when, as a 19-year-old, he left Mexico and came to the U.S. His family hired a coyote to guide him, his brother, and a cousin.
I remember going through from Tijuana. There was a coyote that took a group of us in the middle of the night. It was probably around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We crossed the border. We saw some of the helicopters flying overhead, and down the hill we saw several groups that were being caught. We just stayed put there until, for a few hours, I don't remember how long, until there were no more helicopters flying around. And then our group leader took us, and we were walking, I don't know for how long, until sunrise practically. And then after that afternoon, they put us in the trunk of a car, a big car. I think there were 5 or 6 of us. And from there, they took us out, passed us through a checkpoint. And then from there, we went to the outskirts of Los Angeles. I feel lucky. And then I also have been able to make something of myself while coming to the States.
Arceo came to Chicago, married, and became a U.S. citizen. He studied at the School of the Art Institute and worked at what later became the National Museum of Mexican Art. And he taught at a Chicago elementary school for 20 years through the beginning of the pandemic.
We did do virtual teaching for a few months, actually. It was a lot more difficult because most of the kids were not getting connected. A lot of them didn't have, because we're talking about Humboldt Park, didn't have devices, didn't have access to the internet, so it was very difficult.
For years, he had been planning to retire to focus on his art. His work is part of the heritage of Mexican printmaking that started with the artist José Guadalupe Posada in the late 1800s, including works that feature calaveras.
And also the use of the skeletons that are doing a lot of different things, not in the bloody, spooky way like Halloween, but they are doing regular activities as if they were alive, because to us it is an extension of life, and it is what remains of this body once we die.
Arceo's artistic output is very much alive. While his early works were more political, his latest artwork concentrates on people. One is a tribute to the first responders to COVID-19 and includes a bat taking flight.
I've been able to get my artwork out there. At the same time, I continue to produce every day. I'm very happy that I'm able to do that. So essentially just getting ready until the pandemic is over so that I can do more dispersing of my work through exhibitions and collaborations with other artists as well.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Mark Vitale.
Rene Arceo recently set up an Etsy shop to sell his original works, which go for between $25 and $300. You can find out more and see more of his work on our website. And that is our show for this Wednesday night. Please join us tomorrow night live at 7. President Biden gives his first primetime address to mark 1 year since the shutdown began. And a new exhibit in Elmhurst uses images of Dr. King to push forward the conversation on fair housing. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by